This is a record of the ancestors of Jesus the Messiah, a descendant of King David. That was important to mention because he had to come through the house and line of David, and of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac. If you have King James, that's where it says begat. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. Interesting that Judah is the one mentioned because there were 12 brothers there. There were some pretty important brothers in that mix. I would consider more important than Judah, but he mentions Judah, which is interesting. We'll get back to that because that's a character we're going to look at for a few minutes. Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah. Their mother was Tamar. Now, if you want to read some interesting stories, read the story of Tamar. That's a parental guidance story, and it's in there. But, interesting character. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron was the father of Ram. There's a name if you're ever going to be expecting and thinking of a good name for a boy. Just call him Ram. Ram was the father of Abinadab. Abinadab was the father of Nash, whatever. He was the father of Salmon. Salmon the father of Boaz. And then they mentioned that his mother was Rahab. Interesting character, prostitute. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse the father of King David. David was the father of Solomon. And then in quotations, and his mother was the widow of Uriah. So there's an interesting PG story to read sometime too. Solomon was the father of Rehoboam, and so on. And he goes through very articulate care to mention the house and the line that Jesus would come through. And again, including really interesting people in this genealogy, because we see in an unusual story, Matthew wanted people to understand right away this is a once-in-a-lifetime story. This is not a story that you're going to hear any other place or any other time. It's for a very specific group of people with a very specific group of needs. We're going to jump way back to Genesis. I know it's kind of a weird place to go when we're this close to Christmas. But if you want to jump back with me to Genesis chapter 37. Genesis 37. We're going to take a look at one of the characters that was mentioned in there, the character Judah. Now, I read that over, and I've heard Jesus referred to as the Lion of Judah and all this kind of stuff, and never really thought that much about what is the significance of Judah. Well, what do we know about Judah? And we're going to jump into a little bit more of his story in a few minutes. But Judah was one of 12 sons. And you wonder why of these 12 sons eventually became the nations of Israel. Every one of them, Dan and Reuben, the whole batch of them, each had parts of the nation named after them. Very, very prominent family. The nation of Israel was actually divided into these camps named after these boys. It was very interesting. Their father was Jacob, and he's got these 12 sons. And I look at the list of sons, and I think, well, Reuben was the oldest son, so Reuben would have been a good one. Why not the Lion of Reuben? It has a different ring to it because we're used to hearing Lion of Judah. But what is it about Judah? Why not Reuben? He was the firstborn, and Reuben was a really good guy. Why not Joseph? Joseph, a lot of us know his story. Maybe we saw his movie. But we know about Joseph, right? Because Joseph did all these amazing things. Why is Judah the one that is selected? I think it's because Judah's the one that maybe we can relate to the most, which is really the heart and the essence of the Christmas story, isn't it? God becoming relatable to us, wanting to have a relationship with us. Genesis 37 starts to tell the story. I'm not going to go into all the details there because it's fairly long. But we read about these sons that Jacob has. And one of his sons, his second to the youngest son, is his favorite. This guy's name is Joseph. And again, we know a lot about his story. And because he was the favorite, he was given this richly ornamented robe. And his father always, was glowing about him. Well, the older brothers particularly had just had enough. They were sick of hearing about it. The Bible says they had not a nice word to say about him or to him. So, and it's interesting because it says they hated their brother, and then when he got the robe, they hated him some more. So it's just we're piling hate on top of hate on top of hate. So not the greatest family dynamic going on. But what happens is, I'm going to jump in at verse 18. This is what happens later on when Joseph is a teenager. About 17, so those of you who are 17 can kind of put yourself in this situation. The brothers are all out tending their flocks. They've moved from one spot that he thought they were going to be at to another spot. And his father, Jacob, says, I need you to take some stuff to your brothers. Go check on them, make sure everything's okay. So Joseph right away says, yeah, I'll go, no problem. Verse 18, when Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance, probably his coat, and made plans to kill him. Here comes that dreamer, they exclaim. Come on, let's kill him and throw him into a deep pit. We can tell our father that a wild animal has eaten him, then we'll see what becomes of all his dreams. This is rather intense hate. You know, some of us may not get along that great with everybody in our family. Some of us may be dreading certain amounts of time we have to spend with certain relatives over the next, I don't know what your family dynamics are like. This is rather intense hatred. They see this guy coming and it's like, oh, let's kill him. Let's and we'll make up this story to tell Dad. But Reuben's the oldest one again, came to Joseph's rescue. Well, let's not kill him, he said. Why should we shed his blood? Let's just throw him alive into this pit over here. That way, he'll die without our having to touch him. So that's Reuben's suggestion. And what it goes on to say is that Reuben was secretly planning to come back in and rescue him and help Joseph escape. And then he would bring him back to his father. That was Reuben's plan. Verse 23, so when Joseph arrived, they pulled off his beautiful robe and threw him into the pit. This pit was normally used to store water, but it was empty at the time. Then, just as they were sitting down to eat, which is interesting, because you work up an appetite throwing your brother into a pit, I suppose. So they sit down next to him to eat, and he's probably sitting in there wondering, guys, what am I doing? They noticed a caravan of camels in the distance coming toward them. It was a group of the Ishmaelite traders taking spices, balm, and myrrh from Gilead to Egypt. Now, here's where we're introduced to the character Judah. Judah said to the others, this is interesting, he says, what can we gain by killing our brother? Okay, what's in it for us? What's the benefit to us if we kill him? That would just give us a guilty conscience. Okay, let's sell him. Great compromise. What do we get out of, we get nothing if we kill him. Let's just sell Joseph to the Ishmaelite traders. Let's not be responsible for his death. After all, and a little bit of, I don't know what was going on, because after all, he is our brother. Really nice guys. And his brothers agreed. Okay, that sounds like a good thing. So when the traders came by, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. And the Ishmaelite traders took him along to Egypt. Can you imagine those 10 guys standing there? Really? They've just sold their brother. They will probably, they will never see this guy alive again. 20 pieces of silver divided by 10. They're all standing there tossing 2 silver coins. The price of their own brother. He goes on to tell some of what happened. That sometimes later Reuben returned to get Joseph out of the pit, and he goes into a panic because he's not there. Goes back to his brother, says, the boy's gone, what do we do now? And Joseph's brothers killed a goat, and many of us know the story. They dipped the coat in the goat blood, and then they went back. My father recognized it at once. He goes, yeah, that's my son's robe. Wild animals attacked and eaten him. Surely Joseph's been torn in pieces. And then Jacob, his dad, tore his clothes and put on sackcloth. He mourned deeply for his son for many days. And his family, listen to this, his family all tried to comfort him. All these brothers who had just sold him and then come up with this great plan, to cover this up, they all step up to their dad and put their hand on his shoulder and say, Dad, we feel really bad for you. They all tried to comfort him. But it was no use. He said, I'll die in mourning for my son. And then he began to weep. And that began 22 years of cover-up for Judah. 22 years of living with a secret. 22 years he never broke, never let on that he was covering up for something. 22 of Joseph's birthdays when his father would probably agonize over the fact that he wasn't there, that he was gone. 22 years of covering this up. And in 22 years of living with a secret, a couple other things happened. And some of us know about this because some of us have lived with secrets. Or maybe some of us still do. Maybe some of us, there's chapters in our life we really would wish that nobody else ever knew about. We know what it's like, some of us, to live with a secret that we really don't want anybody to find out about. Because when these guys in this story live with a secret, we tend to do 2 things. One, we tend to be overly critical and overreact to other people who have the same issue that we do. You can see it all the time. People with secrets tend to be extremely harsh and critical of other people who have that same struggle in their life. And it's almost a giveaway how we overreact to people who remind us of us.
That's the cry of our hearts, Lord. We want to be just like you.